Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. This is Orphan Last, aka Skylar Madison, and today I'm going to go ahead and draw another cityscape. Just kind of practicing drawing cityscapes before I go about trying to tackle the process of trying to kind of teach things dealing with cityscapes and such like that. Now, what you're seeing on the screen right now, you can see that I made a number of decisions that are different than what is inside of the bodycoon figurines that are on the screen right now. You can see little decisions that are different than what's than the photograph. Yes, to some degree I am tracing, but to another degree I'm also making my own decisions. And throughout the course of the video, you will see me doing little transformations to that sketch. And then when I go about fleshing out the characters, I wind up making a number of independent decisions above and beyond what I already did. And basically this was just to kind of do a little bit of a speed boost. The idea of tackling another cityscape was a little bit daunting for me, especially with a weekly deadline and such like that, and you know, a full-time job. And so I just wanted to kind of just have one thing just kind of not be so stressful. Normally I don't really use my bodycoon figurines, and normally I don't really use my like any 3D models or anything like that when I go about drawing out an image. Usually I just figure out the character's pose all on my own, but just having that one thing, just the character's poses all figured out right at the very beginning, that was helpful. That was something that I felt was really nice to have at my disposal. Now, yeah, I wound up actually using Manhattan as a bit of a reference. You will wind up seeing the image on the screen from time to time. I wound up using little architectural references from Manhattan, and that's cool. I'm thinking that next time I'm going to try something like Seattle, and see if the architecture is really any different or not. I'm not really quite sure. I don't know, you know, you think you know what a skyscraper looks like, and then you wind up seeing a skyscraper that looks nothing like what you've ever seen a skyscraper really look like. Or it almost has kind of like a Gothic cathedral sort of design to it that's been modified to be, you know, more modern and much taller than something that would be like a you know, a cathedral and such like that. And so, yeah, you know, these are little things that that I'm still trying to get and understand, and all that good stuff. I think that my next image, like this image right here, you might be actually a little bit misled. Some people might look at this image and go, oh, 3-point perspective. No, this is 2-point perspective. It makes you feel like it's 3-point perspective because you're looking down at the scene. But one of the vanishing points is pointed straight down at the ground. And the other one is kind of pointed more towards basically what would be more so considered the horizon. I kind of feel like I should have put that the other vanishing point that's supposed to be on the horizon further off the canvas, much further off the canvas to some degree, because they're like the further off you get the vanishing points, the less distortion you're going to run into. I wound up exceeding past the 60 degree cone of vision. Most artists, they usually, at least to my understanding, they usually try to stay at 30 degrees worth of viewing angle when they're working with linear perspective, but I didn't for some reason. I wound up exceeding past the 60 degree cone of vision. I think it's mainly because I just have a fascination with curvilinear perspective, and I love the idea of exceeding past 60 degrees, and so I try to utilize as much degrees of viewing angle that I can possibly use. And sometimes it's to my detriment, I think. But you know, sometimes you can wind up with some really cool looking stuff if you even sometimes there's some artists that actually appreciate the distortions that take place when you exceed outside of 60 degrees, but what I found was it caused problems where, you have this picture plane, and there comes a point where this imaginary picture plane with linear perspective, it's to where it's so far out there that basically things start getting stretched out, and proportions don't look right. And so I wound up actually making these stoplights at this intersection, and I actually wanted there to be a number of street lights and stuff like that. I should have actually, street lamps. I should have actually put some of those inside of the scene, but for some reason I guess I forgot to do that. But as for the stoplights and such like that, I decided on the height of them, and then I stretched that height out towards the distance, outside of the 60-degree cone of vision that's still on the canvas. And that street lamp would have actually been, it would have been something that would break your immersion in the scene, because it would look as if that stop sign is just way too tall. Here you are, you're looking down on some skyscrapers, and you have all these cars that are rinky-dinky tiny, and then all of a sudden you have this street lamp, or not street lamp, but the stop sign it just seems like it's way too tall. And I hated that idea. And looking back, I feel as though I should have just broke the rules and just decided, okay, it's actually going to be half the size as these other ones, just simply because I hated how tall it was. If it's going to break immersion, at least what I'm feeling right now is it's okay to break the rules as long as it is to preserve immersion. At least that's how I think. I don't know. Like, there's a lot of times I run into like art purists, and I make statements, and the art purists come out and they're like, and they criticize what I have to say. I've even had an art purist say something like that I'm a horrible, despicable human being that should be completely ashamed of himself, and that I should basically just go to hell. Basically, I've had people say some pretty harsh things towards me with regards to the purity of artwork and stuff like that. The thing is you're never going to make the art purists happy. Like, if you make one specific art purist happy, they all have different rules. You're going to run into another art purist that's going to say, you're doing it all wrong. Here's my rules as to what makes artwork pure and perfect and right. And you're cheating in some way. And it's like, okay. Well, that just about everything that you said contradicted what this other art purist said. So really, I'm not really all too concerned about making all of the art purists happy. I understand one of the critiques that I had where, I did something with drawing perspective, and I taught it in a very particular way. And he really didn't like it. He called me a number of names, and said that I should basically be ashamed of myself. But the thing is like I'm still teaching it, at least to some degree, correctly. The thing is like when I remember when I was in third grade. Okay, I remember being in third grade. And then they taught division, okay? And let's say you wind up with a number that's not a whole number, okay? Let's say the answer is supposed to be 5.5, okay? Well, they would say, no, in third grade, they said what you do is you write in 5 with a remainder of 5, 5R5, okay? Interesting. Is it wrong? Well, no. You actually, if you did math that way, I guess you could round that up to being 6, but if you wanted to. But generally, if you're trying to go for just a round number real quick, if you did math that way, you'd still be moderately effective. And knowing some math is better than knowing no math. And so when I teach perspective, it's kind of the equivalent, like how I do perspective, it's kind of the equivalent of writing out 5 with a remainder of 5 instead of writing in 5.5, okay? And I kind of figure people already know that to some degree because I've mentioned multiple times on my channel that I try to use as few rules as possible. If you feel as though you are trapped with the rules, then try to find a way to get the rules to work for you instead of against you. And I generally, Jack Kirby, he's seen as the best comic book artist that has ever lived. At least a lot of people have said that. Personally, I don't see that. But what I think is kind of interesting is that everything that I've described and taught and such like that, different parts of perspective that I kind of ignore, that I know that I should kind of possibly study a little bit more, I guess, but just have a difficulty getting into, I guess. I found out that Jack Kirby actually was doing the exact same thing that I'm doing. Specifically, he wouldn't find out where his ground plane is. He wouldn't try to find out like what a perfect cube is right at the very beginning when setting up his scene, and I don't either. And it's little things like that interest me. It's like, okay, wow, okay, the guy that's considered to be a legend inside of comic books draws images kind of like I do. Backgrounds specifically. He draws backgrounds kind of like I do. That's kind of cool. And once I found that out, it was actually really encouraging to me because it's like when people, art purists come after me, it just has less sting because it's just like, okay, well, what have you output? To some extent, that's kind of my mindset. What have you made? And most of the time, the answer is not much or nothing, or they're always working on a project that's never going to get finished. Is usually what the kind of response that I get. Now, inside of this image, kind of segueing over to another topic, you will see me draw something out, spend a long time. I'll even finish a section of this image here and there from time to time, and I'll look at the measurements. I'll look at the final line work that I put down, and I'll actually completely erase everything in that section, start all the way over with all of the measurements, and redraw it all over again. And it's heartbreaking when I do that. Especially if it's like an hour's worth of work or 30 minutes worth of work or even 15 minutes worth of work. It doesn't matter how much time you've spent on it. It's always heartbreaking when you find out, oh, I've spent all this time and all of it's gone to waste. Basically, what my mindset is usually this. This is kind of how I feel whenever I run into a situation like that. I remember watching a movie, and I think Charlton Heston played Michelangelo painting the Sistine Chapel. And there's a scene where, after working on the Sistine Chapel for about a year, he's just completely depressed because he needs to continue and finish working on the Sistine Chapel, but he doesn't want to keep painting it as it currently is. And he wants to find out how he can salvage the work that he's done so far. And then he goes to a pub to kind of think things through or just kind of get something out of his system. And he drinks some wine, and he tells the guy who owns the pub, "Your wine is sour. It's gone bad." And so here's this guy, the bartender equivalent. He spent all this money on kegs and kegs of wine, And he's like, here, let me taste it. He tastes it. He hates it. And he says, if the wine is bad, throw it out. He grabs an axe, and then he goes ahead and he cuts it into the kegs of wine, and the wine is pouring all over the floor, and the only people that want to drink it are the winos, the alcoholics, and they all jump underneath the wine and get showered with wine. And that gets Michelangelo to kind of, at least inside of the movie, go onto a mountaintop and just kind of think things through. And he thinks, if the wine is bad, throw it out. And that got him to decide to start all the way over, just completely paint over everything that he had done that entire year, and come up with a completely new composition, because he knew that no one was going to look at that original composition and go, wow. And so he started over, which I think is kind of amazing. So yeah, if you've wasted an hour's worth of time or 2 hours worth of time, and you find out that all of your measurements are wrong and you have to start all over, just be grateful that you didn't waste an entire year of your life on that sort of thing. Now, one of the things I did struggle, like last image, I wound up having difficulty trying to figure out how to draw like specific faces to buildings that are really, really foreshortened and such like that. And in this video, I wound up doing things a lot more impressionistically, and just generally not really trying to obsess over them too much, as long as there's at least something there that kind of leaves some sort of imprint within the area, that as long as there's some sort of measurement that took place in those really foreshortened areas, and you make marks of some sort that's impressionistic, that can represent like windows or whatever details that you need in that area, it seems to convey the information pretty effectively. I'm not really normally an impressionistic artist. I don't usually do impressionism at all. And some of the reason is because, there's a lot of classically trained impressionist painters that, by today's standards, they would just be considered just normal painters, because their paintings don't really look impressionistic. They just look like most people would just consider them to be paintings. But there's some impressionistic painters that were a lot less that weren't really formally trained, such as someone like Van Gogh. And I like Van Gogh's artwork, but there are times where I look at some of his paintings and it just looks like a jumbled mess to some extent, and I just keep looking at it. I'm like, it's a Van Gogh painting. If I stare at it long enough, I'll see what it is, and eventually I do. And that's what I do appreciate about Van Gogh's artwork. Eventually it does wind up actually being something. It's just kind of a chaotic mess in all of it. But really, I just kind of... that's the sort of thing that I want to avoid. Generally, in my perception, with my philosophy, with drawing, illustrating, artwork, and such like that, if someone comes over to you and they look at it and they're like, huh, what is it? That one statement is just kind of soul-crushing. It's like, what do you mean, what is it? It's right in front of your face. I mean... So that's the thing that I usually try to avoid. That's why I don't do impressionism really all that often. And yet, I guess the most impressionistic thing that I do is kind of what I've described with my artistic process as it concerns working with perspective. Like when I'm working with perspective, like I said, I don't find a perfect cube. I don't find my ground plane. But once I do decide that, okay, that is the ground for whatever's going on here, I use that specific thing as a reference for anything else. I draw a line from that object to another object, and so that if two objects are resting on the ground, I draw a line from basically one object's ground plane to the other to make sure that there's some sort of point of reference so that they both look like they're resting on the ground, that sort of thing. So, there is a method to my madness. There is a technique to what I do, but this is the fullest extent of I guess my impressionism. I feel like I can make a convincing enough image without having those steps. I feel like those steps are kind of unnecessary and just unnecessarily technical and such like that. So here is another another one of those faces that's really foreshortened. As the windows get further and further and further away, there comes a point where it doesn't matter what your measurements are, because it's just a bunch of really congested pixels, and if you go about making measurements, you're not going to be able to really determine anything out of it. And when you start approaching that, it's just, go ahead and when measurements are going to be pointless regardless, and your lines are going to be really, really dense, if you can't measure it, then go ahead and make your own guess or something like that, or make it since it's so far away, it doesn't need to be so detailed, and so you can go ahead and just kind of impressionistically put whatever you want there to some extent. I decided to make it harder on myself, so I put a border around these windows, and there comes a point where it gets kind of foreshortened to the upper right portion of the canvas, and I decided, okay, well, it's really foreshortened there, and no one's it's really hard to make out what's even going on there. So the only thing that's really formally drawn out with little borders around each one of these windows is just what you can immediately understand visually, and the stuff that gets really foreshortened to where it's difficult to really make out. Yeah, I could have spent hours and hours and hours trying to make each and every single bit of that perfect, but I really didn't, and it still looks fine, is the thing. This is one of the most heartbreaking parts of the whole process of illustrating this image. I spend so much time drawing out these windows, and then I wind up actually deleting them and starting all the way over. This is the part, and some of the reason is because what I consider at this point to be up and down is actually kind of more of a forward and backward sort of position. I used the wrong line. That's actually what I use as up and down is actually a line that represents how this portion of the building is actually. It's hard to say. I drew an interior face, and I confused the line for that interior face as being part of the front face, I guess. It is a way to kind of describe what I experienced here. And so that one idiotic mistake got me to waste about an hour's worth of work here. Really, really sad, really, really frustrating. And basically what I wound up doing to figure that out, because I couldn't figure out what is wrong with this image. What is going on? Why doesn't this look right? I kept asking myself that, and so I started drawing a bunch of lines using my perspective guides, and then I realized, oh, that's up and down. This specific set of lines are up and down, and so I had to start all over again. You just saw it just now. And so yeah, I actually learned a number of things, and I also ran into a number of things drawing this image that I'm not really quite sure how to do without guessing. And so, I'm going to have to do a little bit of research on how to rectify a situation if I can't seem to figure it out, I guess. really, really difficult to get around, I guess. I mean, whatever, it's fine. But yeah, you can see, like, if you actually pay attention, like if you're struggling with drawing perspective and yet you understand everything that I've been saying inside of my videos, try, like, with videos like this, try turning the sound off, and listen to an audiobook or whatever, and play my videos at the slowest speed that you can play them, like my speed painting videos, and ask yourself, why am I making specific decisions as I'm drawing, and see what it does, why I'm doing what I'm doing, and it'll be educational for you. But you can see that I actually, like in green, I drew out the entire, like, veneer of the window and such like that. And so here's the part where I go ahead and flesh out the characters. I decided, yeah, this guy's going to be like the bald-headed guy that was inside of my last image that I drew last week. I decided, oh, he's left-handed now. And even though I guess he's using his sword, his electro blade, with his right hand, at least in this moment. But like, his gun is holstered to his left hand. Maybe he's ambidextrous. Maybe that's a better way to put it. Like, he shoots with his left hand and sword fights with his right hand. I'm ambidextrous. It works like that for me, at least. So why the heck not? It's only a few things I can do with both hands just as good as the other. Like, if I'm drawing, I draw differently with my right hand than I do with my left hand. I have two different styles. Most of the time when I'm drawing with a graphics tablet or with a like a screen tablet or something like that, I'm drawing with my left hand, though. For some reason it just feels more natural. But anyhow, I really like how I fleshed out this character's face. Now, he's been in a number of the galactic ring images that I've been drawing. He's, the guy with the long hair with the trench coat. I don't know. I just decided, I needed an antagonist, and that's the guy. And for some reason, I decided to roll up one of his sleeves a little bit. And this really didn't take too much time. All of the hard work had been really done. You could see that there's some decisions that I made independently of the sketch and independently of the bodycoon stuff. So in the end, I kind of feel like, yeah, that's my work. I made enough decisions to where it's my work. It's not solely dependent on someone else's 3D model or someone else's little doll, I guess. Now, I decided to draw out cars. Now, inside of the previous video, when I drew out a cityscape, I didn't put any cars in the scene or anything like that. And if I decided to have the street be completely barren, I guess that would be a story in and of itself. Here's a city that's in pristine condition, and yet there's not a living soul outside. That's a bit of a story, but I didn't want that. So I drew out a whole bunch of cars, but I decided to do it more impressionistically. I didn't use a bunch of vanishing point lines, even though I did wind up using my perspective guides quite a bit. They're ultimately just two-dimensional objects. They're just flat objects, just kind of laid out, kind of the impression of cars. I tried one out that was kind of 3D, but it didn't really work out. So here's the final image. I think it came out looking really good. It's one of my better ones. I decided not to do a grayscale image for it, just simply because I want some of the images for my coloring book to be just kind of traditional coloring book stuff, and some of them to be grayscale paintings and such like that. I love this image. I love the depth. I love the perspective in it. I think it came out looking great. Anyways, guys, that pretty much concludes it for this video. If you guys enjoyed it, please feel free to like, share, and subscribe. And if you guys would like to get more notifications from me, feel free to join my Discord. A link to my Discord is in the video description below. If you'd like to support this channel, you can purchase one of my t-shirts. A link to my Teespring is in the video description below. Any support would be much appreciated. And if you've enjoyed this content and would like to see more, feel free to click on anything else that's appearing on the screen right now. Thank you very much for your time.